Hello, welcome back to my YouTube. I thought I'd try something a bit different today. I thought what I would try is something a little bit more vloggy, something a little bit more casual. I know I realised pretty much all of my videos are me sat in front of my bookshelf talking about books, just holding them up like this. So I thought what I'd do instead is I would just literally make a cup of tea, walk around the house, do some stuff, and talk about my favourite authors who are guaranteed purchases for me, because we all have them. There are definitely those authors out there that as soon as they release a new book, you're like, yeah, I already know I've loved everything else they've ever written, so I'm going to love what they've written this time. It's guaranteed. It's just the way they write. Absolute bangers. And we all have them, and I've got them, and the more I've read from different authors, the more I've realised, yeah, I'm pretty much going to enjoy everything they write. And sometimes you pick up a new author, or you pick up a new book, and you've just read one of their books, you're like, I'm already obsessed. I'm already know I'm going to absolutely love this. So make a cup of tea with me, and then we'll get into my kind of 5, I think there's going to be, authors that are auto-buy authors for me. Okay, that's my cup of tea made. Let's go talk about these authors. Okay, we're keeping it proper casual this time because I'm literally sat in front of my sofa. So the first author I want to talk about is Brandon Sanderson. Now, if you know me, you know Brandon Sanderson is one of the top authors I'll always be talking about. The first time I experienced Brandon Sanderson was in actually the Way of the King's books. The Way of the King is the first book in the Stormlight Archive, and it was the first book I read of his. Now, I can't even remember where I'd heard of him from, why I picked him up, any of this sort of stuff. I think it was very early on when I was like, I kind of want to pick up some fantasy. Did the usual Googling of, okay, who's the best kind of current fantasy writer out there? A lot of people said Brandon Sanderson. I was looking at some of the best fantasy books you could read, and there was kind of your Brandon Sanderson, your Wheel of Time, your Game of Thrones, your John Gwynne, your Lord of the Rings, obviously, and some of these other amazing books. So Brandon Sanderson, since then, I have not read a single book of his that I've not enjoyed. And I've read a fair few. I've not read masses. I've not read his whole collection. I mean, who has? The man pops out a new book every 15 minutes anyway. But it's basically what I started with was The Way of the Kings. I then read the second book in the Stormlight Archive, the third book in the Stormlight Archive. I've yet to read the fourth, and I'm hoping to read the fifth. When that comes out, though, I obviously have to have read the fourth first. I have also read the first 2 books in the Skyward, I think it's called Skyward series, which is his kind of sci-fi, I think it's YA series that he does, which is absolutely fantastic as well. And what I like about that is it's not quite all as serious as the rest of his series. I think he has books that are aimed at younger people. I know he does actually have some children's books. I'm not 100% sure what they're called, but I know they're out there. But Skyward was very much more humour, more kind of character involvement, a lot more jolly. But there is also the same thing that happens in every Brandon Sanderson book that I've read, where there's this bigger thing going on, and that's what I love. There's always this kind of, okay, we've done the plot, we've done what we set out to do, but there's also this bigger thing happening. So that is what absolutely I am here for every single day of the week. As well as that, I started another series of his. Now, I cannot remember it for the life of me. I'll stick a picture of whatever the first book is here, which is basically like, you know, The Boys on Amazon Prime? It's basically that. Obviously, I think it came out before The Boys, but they're superheroes and they're not great, and there's one guy and he wants to stand up to the superheroes, and that was enjoyable. It's probably not his best. Like, there was just some elements of it where I felt like he knew what he was trying to do, but maybe hadn't quite grasped the full idea of it yet, but it was still enjoyable. So that was enjoyable as well. So I've read Skyward, I've read Stormlight Archive, I've also done Mistborn. I read the first 2 Mistborn books, I need the third to read the third. And I've got Tress of the Emerald Sea on my bookshelf to read because Brandon Sanderson does not miss. So he's my first author on this list, and he's probably the first author I will say to everybody is one of my auto-buy authors. And I say auto-buy, it's not like when he brings a new book out, I buy them straight away. It's just, I know he's going to be at bang every time I read one of his books. So yeah, Brandon Sanderson. The next person on my list is Janice Haley. Now, she may not be as big an author or someone as well known as Brandon Sanderson. A lot of you will probably have heard of Brandon Sanderson, whether you read him or not. But Janice Haley, maybe not quite so, though I really think she's starting to kind of grow. Now, I've met Janice in person at a book event, and she was the least kind of outgoing person there. She kind of walked into the event, and I kind of spoke to her and I said, sorry, are you Janice Haley? And she was like, I am. And she was eating something at the time, bless her. And she was kind of doing this thing. She's like, oh, I'm eating, so sorry. I was like, a huge fan, absolutely love the book she's put out. So, if you don't know Janice Haley, so far what she's written, I don't know if she'll ever come out of this kind of genre, but she's absolutely nailing it, so I hope she doesn't. But she started off with The Appeal, which was a book about a group of theatre people. I'm not sure what they call them, but basically the people that run the theatre. It's all told in the form of texts and emails and newsletters and other correspondence and this sort of stuff. And basically the whole actual book is in these kind of formats. And what that allows Janice to do is it allows Janice to embed far more kind of personality into any of her characters than a lot of other form mediums can. It allows her to embed a lot more kind of story weaving into her stories as well. So what you've got to do as a reader is really do have to kind of pay attention. You do have to sit there and say, okay, who's speaking, who is texting, who is now emailing, this sort of stuff, to be able to grasp it. And I quite liked that. I really liked it. And you'd think, okay, but I'm not going to be able to follow a load of random people's different emails. But what's quite good about them, and I've just realised this plant looks a little bit weepy. I'm gonna water that in a minute. But what you don't have to do is read every single one. You don't have to understand every single one, because there are some emails and texts and things like that that are put into the story just to kind of fill out the character, just to add a bit of personality to them. The first book, The Appeal, is based around the idea of these kind of theatre people all having to raise funds for one of the leader, like the head of the theatre's children, who's very, very unwell, and this is conspiracy theory as to why they need the money, all this sort of stuff. And there's always a twist. And it's a really clever twist. And since then, she's gone on to write other books. One that's set about a cult. One that's set about a kind of creepy place or memory or obsession. I'm not quite sure how to kind of describe the second one. I've forgotten the name of it. I'm going to stick it up here. But the third one about the cult is The Alberton Angels. And I know she's just released another one called The Examiner, which I'm really, really interested to read as well. I presume that's in the same form and medium as all of her others. So that form of media and that kind of form of storytelling really, really interests me. And every single one of her books I've really, really enjoyed. And they're not books, so for me, I'm a massive audiobook listener. They're not books that really lend themselves to audiobooks, though I have listened to one of the audiobooks and it did do a fairly good job. You do just have to kind of pay attention a little bit more, because listening to somebody say, email to at this time from this person at this time is a lot more difficult than reading that thing, like reading an email. So that's the only thing I would say. But for me, it's really immersive. Absolutely loved it. Would highly recommend Janice Haley if you've not yet tried her out, because every single one of her books that I've read so far, I've thoroughly enjoyed, and I'm really looking forward to picking up The Examiner at some point. I'm probably going to wait until it comes out in paperback, maybe pick it up on Kindle. Did you see my cat walk by there? That's Benny, bless him. So yeah, Janice Haley. The next author is Frederick Bman. Now, Frederick Bman, again, is one of those authors where every single book of his that I have read, I've thoroughly enjoyed. My first Frederick Bman book was The Man Called Uwe, and it really made me feel kind of emotional. It made me realise that he knows how to write characters that have multiple dimensions to them. I realised he knows how to interlay kind of deep, dark humour into stories whilst also making, as I said, them emotional. And this really kind of intrigued me into his stories. Then I picked up Anxious People and really enjoyed Anxious People as well. So Anxious People, Man Called Uwe is about an old man who's grumpy and lives in his very specific world. We realise quite late on, actually, because the book's told quite well, that his wife has died. And this family move in who are young and happy. And he's like, that's annoying, but eventually they grow some kind of companionship and it's lovely. Anxious People is about an accidental robbery where somebody who's gone to attempt a robbery realizes that the bank doesn't actually carry cash and has then tried to run out of the robbery and gone into a flat where there's actually a house viewing, and therefore holds all these people up. And he's like, I'm not actually holding you up, but here we go. Then it talks about all the people that are involved in that kind of room even. and their lives and what's going on and their issues and stuff like that. And again, another story where you've got some really deep things going on, some really deep conversations, some meaningful moments, but also at the same time some interlaid humour. Some of the characters are there just to be humorous. Some of the themes are humorous, and at the same time you've got this tandem story of this father and son who are both police officers, and they've got a disconnected relationship that they're trying to mend, and they've got an interesting relationship with their mother who they both think of differently, etc. And then I've read the first 2 books in the Beartown series, and the first one's called Beartown, the second one's called The Winners. I'm not sure what the third one's called, but this is set around a town that's obsessed with ice hockey. Then one day, the star ice hockey player essentially does something that's horrible, and it splits the town into, well, you shouldn't rise them up to be these big stars and think they're egotistical enough and important enough to be able to do these horrible things. And then the other half of the town is very much like, what are we going to do without ice hockey? This one's probably not quite as funny. This one's probably not got the same amount of humour involved, and it's quite dark and quite deep and quite sad, but there is elements of humour which are brilliant. And every single time Bachman's writing is really, really impressive. Now, I don't know if they're written in his language, because I don't think Frederick Bachman's English, and then translated, or whether he does actually write them himself into English, I don't know. But either way, fantastically written, really, really brilliant, sometimes almost poetic. A lot of the times there's kind of quotes laid within that you can think, oh, that's really impressive. I was really impressed by that. So that's Frederick Bachman, again, another impressive author who anytime he kind of releases a book and people start talking about it, I'm like, yeah, I know I'm going to love that because I've loved everything else he's written. So another of my absolute recommendations. So Brandon Sanderson, Janice Haley, and Frederick Bachman so far. Do you like how I keep changing the camera angle? Yes. Well, there's Nala, this Sarah and the cat. And I think if I lean far enough, you can see just the corner of Benny and some of his toys that he's pulled out. Anyway, let's talk about my next author. So it's Lisa Jewell. Now, Lisa Jewell is an author that when I started off, I thought, yeah, it's thriller, it's fine. She's one of the biggest names in thriller at the moment and has been now for quite some time. Anytime one of her books comes out, it basically shoots straight to the #1 bestsellers. Everybody's talking about it, whether it's good or whether it's not. Now, Lisa Jewell shot herself into being an automatic author for me when she wrote None of This Is True. Now, it's actually one of her most recent novels, so you may say, well, how can you consider that an automatic reader if you've only enjoyed her most recent novel? And that's not necessarily the case. So an automatic read for me, or an automatic author for me, doesn't have to be the best authors I'm reading. It just means I know what I'm getting, and I enjoy that. With Lisa Jewell, I know I'm getting one of the best thriller writers out there. I know I'm going to get some fantastic twists. I know I'm going to get tense chapters. I'm going to get fast-paced action. I'm going to get characters that are down to earth and British. And I'm really, really okay with that. But the thing with None of This Is True is it's genuinely gone on to be probably my favourite thriller of all time. So if you are a thriller person and you've not yet read None of This Is True, I would highly, highly recommend it because it was just fantastic. Now, as I said, the reason that Lisa Jewell is one of my automatic buys at the moment is, one, she's fantastic online. I've actually had conversations with her both on Instagram and on Twitter, and she just seems like one of those people who's more than happy to speak to fans of her books, which is a massive win for me, because that to me just screams somebody who's authentic about having a good fan base, about making sure that when they're writing their books, they're writing them for their fans, and that they want their fans to kind of enjoy it. Now, fans is a word I don't really like using, but readers of their books. So that's a big win for me. And then the other things, as I said, and I mentioned them just now, is that I know what I'm getting with Lisa Jewell, and I want those things. I don't consider maybe Lisa Jewell quite a palate cleanser, but maybe a slightly easier read. Maybe I've just read like a 700-page fantasy epic, or I've just read some really dark, deep story, or some sci-fi, and I've thought, God, that was a lot of brain power, I had to focus a lot, had to kind of, I don't know, engross myself in a completely different environment. Picking up a Lisa Jewell just feels so comforting to do because they're often always set in England, sometimes not. So I'm kind of comfortable with that. They're set around people with normal names and normal lives, and they just have extraordinary things often happen to them, which I'm so kind of okay with and I so want in my book sometimes. So Lisa Jewell for me is one of the best kind of thriller writers and one of my automatic thrillers, and probably my favourite thriller writer writing at the moment. There's quite a few that I do enjoy as well. Claire McIntosh, Claire Douglas. Claire's apparently very good at writing thrillers. Freedom McFadden's always one, and you'll have seen quite a few of me reading Freedom McFadden's recently because I'm just trying to get a load of them read so then I can do a video for you on here talking about my favourite Friedas ever. But basically, yeah, Lisa Jewell is one of my favourite authors at the moment, and I pretty much pick up everything she's read. Her most recent one, Breaking the Dark, I wasn't the biggest fan of. I will admit, I do want to put that on here because some people may come in and say, but you didn't enjoy it. I saw on TikTok you didn't enjoy her most recent book. And that's fine. And I'm not saying every one of her books is going to be unbelievable. There was something different about Breaking the Dark because it had kind of like an American character. It was set in America. It was a Marvel book. There was an element of that I wasn't the biggest fan of. And that's not what I was seeking for in a Lisa Jewell book, which is why I made the comments that I did about it. I didn't scathe it. I didn't say it was horrible. I just said it wasn't my favourite Lisa Jewell yet. Just wanted to put that in there in case somebody came and said, oh, but you didn't like her most recent ones. Like, yeah, doesn't mean I don't like Lisa Jewell as an author. Doesn't mean I'm always going to check out her new books. So yeah, Lisa Jewell is my latest on this list of my favourite authors. So we've got one more to go. So finally, there's quite a few other kind of authors that could be on this list. There's kind of, I don't know, David Nichols and Frida McFadden and maybe John Boyne now after reading The Heart's Invisible Furies. But I want to consider authors that I have read multiple versions of their books or multiple books that they've written, not versions of their books. I don't read different languages or different front covers, different books by them. And I want that to be a genuine kind of, okay, yeah, he knows what he's talking about because he's read multiple versions of their books. My last person is Taylor Jenkins Reid. Now this, it kind of falls into the same category as Lisa Jewell. Taylor Jenkins Reid isn't the greatest writer that's ever written. She doesn't fill me with deep joy every time I read one of her books. But what I do get from every one of Taylor Jenkins Reid's is a formula. And a formula I love. Nearly all of Taylor Jenkins Reid's, at least her most recent ones, her popular ones, have been set about a character or a group of characters telling a story over an expanded experience, whether that's their career, whether that's their life, something like that. And they're often famous people, which makes them a little bit more interesting because you kind of get to see the behind the scenes of what it would be like to be famous in different environments, whether they're a tennis player or a rock star or in a band or something like this. And what also Taylor Jenkins Reid likes to do is also try and inlay a kind of little bit of a twist in there as well, which, again, big fan of twists, especially when they're in books that aren't in thrillers, because you're not expecting it. In a thriller, you're kind of like racing through these chapters and you're thinking, if a thriller doesn't happen or a twist doesn't happen, I'm not going to enjoy this. But when you're reading just a regular book like a Taylor Jenkins Reid, and I'm not even sure how I'd consider them. A lot of them are historical fiction, but they could be contemporary fiction. When there's a twist in them as well, it's really, really good. And I just love them. They're huge. They're full of personality. They also are set in kind of the same universe, which I'm a big fan of. You get characters like, for example, you've got Carrie Soto, Daisy Jones, Evelyn Hugo, these kind of characters all interlay. There's also one of the dads of one of the stars in Malibu Rising is also in the other books. And it's just great. It's really, really enjoyable. And again, I know what I'm getting there. And I hope Taylor Jenkins Reid does stick to that kind of formula. I watched Daisy Jones and the Six on TV as well there. I think it was at Amazon Prime did it. And that was brilliant. It was really good and well converted. The fact they did original songs, I think they used original lyrics, but they kind of made tunes to them is really impressive. And the fact that it was like Elvis Presley's granddaughter or daughter or whatever is really, really impressive as well. So that was all great. And I think Evelyn Hugo is also being made into a TV series or movie as well. So looking forward to that. But again, as I said, it's just another comfort author that I know if she's going to release a book, I'm going to pick it up at some point because I really enjoyed everything else that I read from her and I know what I'm getting from her. So they're my 5 authors that I would consider my auto buys. And I've kind of put these in with some caveats where I haven't read every single one of their books. If a brand new book came out by them, I wouldn't automatically pre-order it. What I'm saying here is these are 5 authors of books that I really, really enjoy and I know what I'm getting and I really, really enjoy what they put out. These are authors that if they were to release a new book, I would stick it straight on my Amazon wishlist and I would read it as soon as that kind of arrived, either at mine or if I saw it out on a deal or something like that, it'd be one of the first books I picked up. Or if I knew I needed a certain feeling, i.e. with Lisa Jewell, if I just wanted to relax and I just wanted to read a fantastic thriller, I'd pick up a Lisa Jewell. Taylor Jenkins Reid, if I wanted to do this kind of like, I'm really in the mood to kind of get emotional about a career that spanned decades, I'll read a Taylor Jenkins Reid. But then you do have your 3 authors who I would consider absolutely fantastic and I would read their books straight away, and that's Brandon Sanderson, Frederick Bman and Janice Haley. And at the moment, those 3 are the 3 authors that if they release a book, I take note. If they release a book, I follow it. I want to see if the reviews are continuously as good as all the other kind of books they've released have been so far. So let me know what authors for you are an auto buy as well. What authors, when you see them on the bookshelf and you think, I haven't got that one, I need to get that one, do you go out and instantly buy? Also, let me know if you've seen anything weird in the background. I'm always a little bit more self-conscious of filming elsewhere in my house, mainly because it's not regularly cleaned. We don't have clean this every single day, so sometimes there'll be something. For example, there is a cereal bowl on the floor from this morning that I've not yet taken into the kitchen and put in the dishwasher, so I've been trying to film around that. There's also some odd things like this elephant. These are coasters, so like when we have more than like 5 friends around, these pop out. I've also got Myrtle sat here, which I've not read in a while, but it sits there because this is where I read. This is where I leave my current read books, but they're all upstairs because I'm reading them. Let me know if you see anything weird, but more importantly, let me know your automatic authors, and let me know how you take your tea, because that's important. Until then, if you've not yet subscribed, thank you for watching. Give it a like and subscribe. That's if you've not yet subscribed, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.